Thing. Recording in progress. Hello, welcome. Monday, 5:30 mindfulness meditation half hour. My name's Casey. This is Monday, October 14th. Great to see you. I'm reading a book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. Second time reading it. Great book. Getting even more out of it this second time around. Just remembering certain things, certain phrases that I really like. He talks about writing, and this is kind of um, outside of the direction I'd like to take this meetup in, but the definition of writing, I think that this is just a great example of how Covey uses words to, elucidate certain ideas. And he says, just as breathing exercises help integrate body and mind, writing is a kind of psychoneuromuscular activity which helps bridge and integrate the conscious and subconscious minds. Writing distills, crystallizes, and clarifies thought and helps break the whole into parts. So hot. I love that. As an English major, that sentence is one of the most amazing sentences I've ever read. I love it. Writing is a huge part of my life, whether it's journaling or for grad school or, writing essays or short stories or even novels that I've been working on. So writing is a huge part of my life, and it always has been. I remember being really excited when I was learning how to write, thinking, this is so amazing. Look at these letters. I could just do this forever. Same with books, which obviously one is in many ways a continuation of the other, or a byproduct perhaps. But I read that and it's like, um, recognizing and understanding writing from a different level, a deeper level, right? Of course, we know what writing is, but we hear that definition of it, and it lands differently for some of us. And that's the beauty of theoretical approaches, different analytical frameworks that we can approach anything with in our lives, and kind of honing in on the subject at hand, which is mindfulness and meditation. The idea of breaking the whole into parts, to me, that speaks to, in many ways, the synthesis of short-term and long-term, right? Oftentimes our short-term plans don't really align with our long-term plans. So we're taking a more micro perspective, smaller, that is, and we are oftentimes compromising or right out abandoning the macro perspective or the big picture, right? The long term. And that can be problematic for many reasons. I've said before on these meetings, one of the reasons that drug abuse is such a problem is because it's an incredibly effective short-term solution. Incredibly effective, almost instantly, depending on the manner with which you're using the substance that you're abusing, but it hits quickly. The short term, very, very effective. Long term, however, we know that those two do not get along, right? The short term effects don't translate very well into a long term, self-destruction. It just leaves a total disaster in its wake for many, many people. So that's a great example and a relatively more extreme example of how short term and long term don't sync up. And how can we take our short term experiences and translate that into a long term experience? Because we don't know what the future holds, right? Obviously. I mean, that's one of the greatest cliches ever, like stay in the now because you don't know what the future holds. Yesterday is a gift or something. Eleanor Roosevelt, I think, has a saying, something like that. The present is a gift, future's not there yet, the past, and we know that. So how do we approach the long-term solution or keep that in mind at least and allow our short terms, the short-term approach we take, to not only align with and move in the same direction as our long-term, but to adapt when the long-term changes a little bit, when the goalposts move for us, as they inevitably will when we approach any kind of goal. And that's okay. I would say that the idea of having an internal compass based on your principles and your character, if that's what you like to call it, these are things that are instilled in us so we can grow, we can foster, we can really take advantage of. And that will give us a deeper sense of who we really are from the inside out, right? Spoke about that last time. The outside in, that's cultural conditioning, societal conditioning, religious conditioning, familial conditioning. That's all the trauma that was inflicted on us and working its way in to who we think we are. When really the inside out approach, we start to notice who we are before all of the outside stuff came in. And that's the true nature, as Zen would say. So it's already there. It hasn't gone anywhere. But because of all the outside in influence, right, that we have, it can be very difficult to find one's true nature because we have to go inside deeper to see the, fundamental principles that really make us who we are. And that can be exciting, it can be daunting, it can be intimidating, it can be scary, it can be really a lot of different things. And that's great because the clearer the picture you have of yourself right now, the more in tune you are with yourself right now, the greater the link between the present moment, right, the short term, and the long term, the future. Because I've said before, not here, but in a journal entry actually, when I was writing, I said, life is about finding a balance of, you know, planning for the future and knowing that you could die at any time. Life is just a balance of planning for a future that may or may not exist with things that may or may not happen. And we try to keep that balanced with the knowledge or the knowing, and especially if we practice it, the knowledge that we could die at any time. We don't know if our next breath is going to come, right? And those can be two very different things. Those can be two very difficult things, and very seemingly paradoxical concepts that we may feel can't reckon with one another. They can't come together. But really, the more time we spend going inward, meditating, right? The more we meditate, the more we start to recognize and utilize that internal compass, which is going to set us in the right direction. Because if we are doing the work now, that work is going to translate into the long term. Whatever we do now, I've said before, anything you do for 20 minutes twice a day, your life will change. It will change you. It will change you. 20 minutes twice a day, whatever it is, meditation, reading, walking, exercise, drugs, whatever. Uh, Only 20 minutes twice a day. And if that's true, and it most certainly is, that's just the accumulation of time and habit and routine, things like that. The, I mean, if that's the life altering effects that 20 minutes twice a day has, well, what about the 24 hours? What are we doing there? And again, we think 24 hours, geez, that's so much. I can't even stay with my breath sometimes. That's okay. I, that's fine. That's why we practice. It's hard to stay with your breath. It's hard to be there with your emotions. It's hard to stay in the present moment. We're not taught that. From the outside in, that is a very foreign concept. From the inside out, we can practice that and get stronger, and that will allow the present moment, the short term, the right now, right? I mean, it doesn't get much more short term than the breath you're taking because that's going to be gone, and then you're on to the next breath, right? That's, you know, about as short term as it gets. From an experiential, perhaps, an experiential and a somatic standpoint, right? Breath comes and goes. You never take the same breath twice. By practicing meditation, by connecting with ourselves, going deeper, noticing, looking, and sitting in that mindful stillness, we are setting the foundation that will direct us and align us with the big picture, with our future, whatever it may look like. And again, the adaptability of the approach that we take to any kind of future goals, the adaptability is key. Because if the goalposts change and we haven't planned for that, it's going to be a lot of suffering. It's going to be a lot of irritation. We might take that personally when goals change, when situations don't go the way that we plan, which is often, right? The mind has a horrible track record, but we still believe it because there is a possibility that whatever we're thinking may happen a lot of the times. Um, you know, you may get the same result one out of 1,000 times, but 1,001, you know, that may be the time where the results differ. So there is always a little bit of what if with the mind, and that gives a lot of these thoughts and these anxieties and things, it gives them a little bit more weight, right? Because it's true, we have to concede that regardless of the past, we don't know what's going to happen, even based on past experiences. And that can be scary. But we can tune in and see what's happening right now. And when we start to break the whole, right, the WHOLE, the whole, the big picture, when we start to break that into pieces, more manageable pieces, kind of like drinking the ocean. How do you drink the whole ocean? Well, one sip at a time, right? The idea of investing completely in the present moment, trusting in the process, is the work that will translate into the long-term approach. Because oftentimes, Covey says, sometimes you're cutting through the undergrowth in the jungle and you're so busy doing that, you don't realize you're in the wrong jungle. Or he says you're climbing up the ladder of success and you don't realize that the ladder is against the wrong wall, right? All these metaphors. It's like you, you could be doing the work in other areas, right? You could be so focused, but that may not align with your true nature. It may not align with the plans and the true layout, the bigger picture of your future, of your long-term approach. So when we trust in the short term, the long term helps itself. And we don't use the present moment as a means to an end. It is the thing, right? And the more time we spend in the present moment, the more we gain that understanding. And none of this is to say that we don't plan for the future. I mean, the whole point of this is we can plan for the future, and we do it from a deeper sense of what really matters. And we do it with a better aligned perspective. We do it with a clearer head, a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us and how one is reflective of the other. You start to notice that stuff. And this is profound shifts in the present moment, in the short term, breaking the big picture into pieces, taking it at a more digestible sort of pace or approach. And then we look out and we think, oh, yeah, all right, the goalpost moved a little bit. A lot of things happened that I didn't think was going to happen, but I kind of planned for that. Not what was going to happen, but planning for, oh, yeah, the adaptability here. I want to be able to adapt, pivot, put my ladder against a different wall, make sure I'm in the right jungle, etc., etc., etc. I remember I was concerned about my future. My grandfather years ago got very sick, and it occurred to me that at some point, I live with my grandfather. He's doing really well, but at some point he won't be here, and my life will change. The house will probably get sold. All of that is going to be very, very intense, very disruptive, I would imagine. Um, and I was thinking, oh, what am I going to do after this? Like, what's the plan? And I was so scared. I kept saying, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. And I'd bring it up, on one side. What are you going to do when things change? What's your plan? I said, I don't know. I don't know. Finally, I said, what do you mean you don't know? What do you mean you don't know? Who knows if you don't know? If you don't figure it out, it will get figured out for you. Sit down, be still, notice what you're feeling, feel your way through it, and figure it out. It's there, right? It'll get figured out for you. People will tell you where to go. You'll find yourself in situations that you feel, you'd rather not be in and you have very little control over, but in a way you put yourself there, which is what karma is. The definition of karma varies depending on who you talk to. But I think the most literal definition is karma means it is your own doing. So it's not necessarily like you're bad in this life, so next life, person you are suffers. I mean, it varies, but Alan Watts says karma means it's your own doing. So I'm going to go off of that source. So whether or not we realize it consciously or otherwise, we are working with the small picture or the short term, and one way or another, it's going to translate into the long term, right? One way or the other, it's going to translate into where we're going. So by investing in that internal compass and thinking, okay, let me just stay open to different possibilities. Let me see what aligns with me. Do I want a house? Do I want a mansion? Am I going to move out of the States? There's so many possibilities here. Think about it. Doesn't need to be intimidating, although it can be, and that's fine, right? It can also be exciting. It can be practical. I mean, it can be all kinds of things. Investing in the short term is what we do when we meditate. And truly, in the long term or the short term, I'd imagine we would want to operate from the clearest understanding of ourselves. deep understanding of ourselves. That's the best place to operate from. And I can't think of a better way to um, check in with oneself than meditation, because everything we do is in the present moment, right? And because of that, um, uh, one way or another, it will translate into our future or whatever is, however long that may be, whatever that may look like. So doing the work is here, and it's the process, not the product, because goals will change, things will happen, obviously. And if we focus on tuning into ourselves, the radio frequencies, the balance between, how we're feeling and what we're thinking and physical sensations, things like that, the balance of noticing them, recognizing them in the present moment, but not letting that be all that there is, because there's so much more to it, right? So not letting the short term or um, the smaller picture take up what is the greater picture, the ultimate, the future, the long term. So there's different ways to approach this. I remember a girl was telling me, I need to plug my laptop in just real quick, or I will lose you. I was talking with a girl, and she was saying that many times when she meditates, she sees herself from the outside in. She says it's almost as though I'm looking at myself from afar. And I said, that's great. That's a great technique. It's a great tool to use. It's a great approach to mindfulness meditation. I said, but be careful, because if that's all that you do, if that's the only way that you meditate, be careful, because that's also a trauma response. I think they call it disassociation or dissociation. Not sure. The idea of leaving one's body often comes from trauma. That's an approach that, or a trauma response that some people take because they have no other option. So if that's the way that you want to meditate, that's perfectly fine, but just make sure that you're not replaying or reenacting a trauma response. Make sure that you can also go in. So we're looking through both ends of the telescope, right? Small and big. We're looking through both ends of the telescope because we can, because we have that capacity. So we can open up, we can use our imagination, we can see the bigger picture, and we can also tune in to how we're feeling now. And the more we recognize those two, the more they balance out, and the more we're aligned with our true principle, our true self, our true nature, and the better off the long term will be, whatever it may hold. So, very exciting stuff. And all of this practice is done in real time. And again, I'm not saying don't, pick your kids up from soccer practice, at the right time. Don't throw away your cell phone and live in the woods. You can if you want to, but you know, aligning with your true principles, operating from a place of, the fundamental essence of who you really are. That may sound, mystical, but it doesn't have to be, right? The more we tune in, the more familiar we get with ourselves, the deeper the understanding. And that's the understanding that's going to help direct us. So whenever you sit down to meditate, you have that option, whether it's from outside looking in or inside looking out. Just make sure that you're using those techniques as opposed to those techniques using you. Because if it's a trauma response, whatever that may be, you might not be moving forward with the tools that may help you more. Right? So just a few things to keep in mind. A little less than 10 minutes, but let's get some meditation in here. Find yourself in a comfortable seat. Close your eyes, relax. Let's stay present, focusing on the short term. Maybe noticing how the long term comes up. Start to deepen your breath. Whenever you're ready, gently blink your eyes open. Some of us may be where we've always wanted to be in our lives. Some of us may be accepting of the life that we have now, and it might not be exactly what we wanted. Some of us may be fighting our existence or things in our life so hard that it seems to take up all our energy. Wherever you are, the practice of giving yourself space in the present moment will translate to a better future. The short term is not a means to an end, although we often treat it that way. When we lose that perspective or that treatment of the present moment and treat it as a gift, treat it as the focal point of our mindfulness, of staying open, of finding that self-compassion, the rest of our life starts to balance out. And that's a matter of trusting in the process and practicing as often as you can, as often as you want. So thank you for sharing your practice with me tonight. As always, great to see you. My name's Casey. Take care.